Welcome back, everybody. Second episode between two extinguishers. Today's guest, you know him from the Fire Sprinkler podcast, Chris Logan. How are you, bud?
Good.
It's good to see you. Yeah, it's always good to see you. Yeah, are you kidding me? Well, I've been on your show a couple times, right?
That's right.
So, you know, it's kind of nice to return the favor a little bit. And
I like now. I've been doing the Fire Sprinkler podcast. Subscribe.
Yeah.
I've been doing the Fire Sprinkler podcast now for 5 years. So I like that other people are getting into the fire protection and life safety, say, market in podcasting, right? Because the reason I started the podcast was because I grew up on talk radio,
right,
listening to my dad, listening to the Tigers radio
right.
in the car on the way, like living in southwestern Ontario. They were Tigers and Wings guys, so you always hear the talk radio. And then when I got my license, I'd listen to CBC talk radio. Driving around, so I wanted something industry related to listen to driving around. So constantly searching iTunes and stuff like that, and not being able to find anything, I was like, all right, I'll do it myself.
That's awesome.
For a little while and hope somebody takes over, but then I started doing it and fell in love with it.
Yeah, well, I mean, it's pretty cool. Like, I have to say that
you're probably one of the only couple people that think a fire protection related podcast is cool, and I appreciate that.
I know, because the industry's not very big, right? We all kind of know each other.
Yep.
But there's a lot of information, and things are changing. We had breakfast together earlier today. We talked about some new products, and we shared our opinions on them. And I think that people have to get that information, because there's a lot of really smart people in this industry.
There is.
And you get information out of them, sometimes just matter-of-factly in a conversation. And you think, wow, a lot of people should know this because it's important. And what you've done, and I mean, I've known you since I left the fire department and joined CASA. We met probably by telephone. We didn't meet in person. But
probably 2011.
Exactly. At least that. But so we've known each other a reasonably a fair amount of time. But what you've done is, I think, important. I don't think people fully understand how important it is, because it's really hard to get good information into the hands of fitters. So I now work for National Fire, between two extinguishers, and so it's very different for me. Fire service, CASA, manufacturer, and now distribution in my career. And there's a gap. We talk to purchasers, we talk to owners of companies, but our drivers see fitters. But fitters are the people using new tools, new valves, all this stuff, and getting them information is a challenge.
Yeah, and the other thing with the fire protection industry is the hardest thing that I had when I started the podcast was getting people that wanted to talk and share, because it's a very prideful industry.
Absolutely.
Every fitter you talk to is... We're an arrogant bunch. As far as I'm the best sprinkler fitter that's ever lived.
Well, everybody else at 853
right? That's right. So getting them willing to come on and talk in a public environment about the trade is very difficult, because nobody likes being wrong. Now, if you go back, I've done over 90 episodes now of the Fire Sprinkler podcast, and there's always a slip up in almost every single episode. You can find out where somebody, because you're talking casually, right? You're talking very casually, and I like to think that's one of the benefits that I have, is people are talking casually, and there's always little slip ups, just using the wrong terminology, using the wrong dates, naming the wrong standards, and that's people involved with NFPA are saying just a very quick off the cuff, you name something, and it's just a conversation thing.
And if you think about the number of standards, right? So everybody knows 13, 13R, 13D, 14, but like 20, like you just keeps going and going and going and going and going.
30, 33, 72.
Exactly.
Like it's an ongoing battle, and they're adding them all the time too. Like the new lithium-ion battery, and I mean, here's one potential issue that I'm going to say is it's either, I want to say 820 or 899. I don't know, that might be wrong here if it's not. But they're constantly, and that's the good thing about this industry too, is it's not we've got it. We did it, guys. We nailed the industry. The industry has everything figured out.
Exactly. And having sat in the room last year at NFPA and voting. So
Yeah.
those of you that are NFPA members, if you've never been to an NFPA conference, the trade show is amazing, there's no question. But get in that room. If you have voting rights, get in that room and
Yeah.
listen to that dialogue.
Yeah.
Because there's a whole bunch of really smart people in there hashing out what the next 3 years are going to look like in a standard. And if you've got to vote, it's your time to have a say in the industry, and it's a cool process because of that.
It's a very interesting process, and I'm hoping to get more involved with that process kind of as I evolve in this industry. Because I'm still fairly, I like to think I'm still fairly young in the industry. I'm not, but I like to think so. Another thing to keep in mind with that is you don't have to be a member of NFPA to submit
Absolutely.
a requirement
Yeah.
or
A change
investigation.
request.
Yeah, you can put those in yourself. Now, maybe voting on it, you may not be able to do. I'm not 100% clear on that. But if you have a situation that you think needs special attention, you can propose that to NFPA. You have to go through the proper channels to do so.
And it's very well laid out. And I mean, and I think, we ended up in this conversation about NFPA, but it takes me back to your ability to communicate with people through the podcast.
Right.
And so I don't know how many fitters know that they can have an impact there. And you have this tool to give people information that they would never ever get their hands on. And I appreciate it. I mean, the couple ones I've done, we did Blaze Master.
Yep.
While I was with Lubrizol, and we did Freeze Master. I've watched our episode, your podcast, our episode. I say our because I was on it with you.
Yeah. It ain't just mine, trust me. You weren't watching it for me.
On antifreeze, and I'm really proud of what we gave people.
Yeah.
I think that we gave them a whole bunch of tools and technology and information around how to test listed antifreeze, how different it is.
Yeah.
And I think it's still tough in the industry with listed antifreeze and what that means and what you have to do with it. But people are downloading. How many downloads? Like how many episodes? Let's start there.
It's a weird. So I think released right now is 90 or 91, or something in that area. But I have about 96 available that are going to be recorded. Anybody that's a listener of the podcast knows that my issue in the past has always been consistency. So for the past year, my goal has been to release an episode every week. Now, as long as I can get content, if you have a project that you want to talk about that's an interesting project, a skilled involved project, or just an interesting story that you got to tell about when you were an apprentice, when you were a fitter, anything, let me know. Come on and we can talk sprinkler. I like talking sprinkler.
No question. Yeah, no question.
No question. You rolled your eyes a little
No,
bit.
it's 100%.
Oh, God. My wife says the same thing.
Yeah.
Hey, you want to go on vacation? Where are we going? Sprinkler conference?
Yeah. Yeah, well, if it works for you, good for you.
It works excellently for me. My wife knows what she was getting
What you got into? Perfect.
Yeah, it may have escalated a little bit in the past 11 years, but that's okay.
Very cool.
Yeah.
So, one of the things that we want to do between two extinguishers is just talk to people.
Yeah.
Similar to what you do, but there's a little more education on yours. And ours is, we always talk about NFE. The very first episode was with Dan, whose dad founded this company, and we got a background of all of that. But the thing about the sprinkler industry, and I led with that because Wallace Kent was started by
my grandfather back in 1984.
So there's a trend here in the sprinkler industry, right?
Yeah.
And so give me a little bit about Wallace Kent. And
so Wallace Kent is my family business that I obviously work for still.
Yeah.
It was started by my grandfather and my dad back in 1984. We serviced the Chemical Valley, Sarnia area.
Yeah.
And then gradually expanded to Windsor, a little bit of London, Leamington, stuff like that. We started majorly in the chemical refinery business, the Chemical Valley.
Yeah.
Dow Chemical was our big customer at the time.
Yeah.
And then we moved into kind of evolving with the industry as the industry evolves down in our area, being a limited area, into warehousing. And then around 2014, 2015, we kind of focused a lot on residential.
Okay.
So mid to low rise condos are big down here. We can build out in southwestern Ontario. In Toronto, you guys build
We're
up.
going vertical,
Yeah, so a lot of our buildings are square footage, low rise square footage, right?
Yeah.
Lower fire pumps, higher volume, kind of things like that. And that's been our bread and butter while still maintaining our presence in the Chemical Valley and refineries and warehousing and stuff like that.
Excellent.
So, yeah, it's good. Right now, me and my oldest brother Dave are kind of doing the day-to-day stuff with the operation of Walls Kent.
Yeah.
And we've got about 15, 16 fitters on the tools slamming out pipe every day, and everybody, we treat the business like we're all family. If you're not a Logan, you're still treated as a Logan.
Amazing.
And the good thing, you call our office, it's either going to be my mom or one of my brother's lifelong childhood friends that we grew up with that's going to answer the phone. And if you call after hours, you're going to get one of me or my brother that's going to answer the phone.
Yeah. So it's intriguing to me, because I'm really, my history in the fire service, I started in the fire departments, right, with North York and Toronto, and coming into this industry, it is very family based. And I can think about I've only really been engaged in the fire protection side for 10, 11 years now, but I've met,
all?
Yeah.
That's surprising. You've done a lot in this industry in a short amount of time.
In a fairly short period of time. I'm very lucky, and I'm very grateful. But I've met at least 2 generations of people working within a company, and it just seems to keep happening and keep rolling. And my son now is in the trade. He's an 853 apprentice, and I have to say, for those of you who think about what to do with your life, my son played junior hockey, graduated from the University of Toronto, and then one day came in and said, I can't work in an office. I think I want to get into fire protection, and started on the tools. And
son, I've never been happy.
Yeah, exactly. Well, no, but you know what? The best part for me as a dad is he comes home from work every day and he tells me a story about something he did at work. He's enjoyed it. He's learned something. Yeah. He's got something new to talk about every single day. So, if people are looking, or you're trying to help your kids figure out what trade to get into, this isn't a bad trade. It's a good living.
Yeah. But the apprenticeship has changed a lot in the past, I would say 15 years.
Right.
So I think I started in this industry in 2007.
Right.
Which, when you do the math, that's actually makes me feel kind of old. Man, that sucks.
Yeah,
anyways,
you're not old, bud.
when you look back at when I was in trade school and talking to the other apprentices and kids in my class that were in the industry, how did you get into the industry? My neighbor, my uncle, my dad, my brother.
Yeah, it's that family tree, right?
Exactly.
Yeah.
But now you're seeing a change in the past 4 years in Ontario mostly, that they have been hitting the job fairs, they have been hitting the high schools, and they have been doing a big push because of, for lack of a better term, somewhat of a labor shortage in our industry.
Right.
As the industry grows, sprinklers being required in more structures, more residential dwellings, things like that. The industry, the family business model almost can't keep up with it, and they've been forced to go outside of that and advertise the jobs.
Absolutely.
Right? So, which I think is very beneficial, because it starts that family, it plants that seed again.
Exactly.
Right.
Well, yeah, and an employee turns into a business owner, and that's something that has happened. You talk to guys in this trade, and everybody's worked for Grinnell. And then started their own company. Yeah. And so I think it's good for the industry. There's been a couple announcements lately about trades. The province of Ontario, I don't know if you've heard, said that kids could, when they hit grade 11, don't have to do grade 12 if they go to a trade. So yeah.
So now, as an 853 member, here's the caveat with that: is you do have to have grade 12 math in order to be an 853 member.
Absolutely. So there's a challenge there.
Yeah. And
I know the government is trying to address what you just brought up about shortages of staff. I don't know, for anybody who follows me on LinkedIn, I have a pretty good following on LinkedIn. I've posted about this, and I know the need for staff. I know what contractors are going through. I get all of that, but I got to say, a 16-year-old. There's a couple things. If they leave to start a trade and then come back to school because they've decided, no, you know what, that's not really for me, they've missed their cohort. So everybody else that they were going to school with is now a year ahead of them.
That's right.
Do they actually go back to school and finish? If it was me, probably not. Maybe these kids have better mental toughness than I did.
Right.
But then the other part of it for me is, my son's 23. He's played junior hockey. He's been involved in conversations with people at different levels.
Yep.
Finished university, gets onto a job site. There's a mental toughness you need to survive on a job site as well. You make a mistake, you're going to hear about it.
And so is everybody else around you.
And so is everybody else around you. And is a 16-year-old ready for that? Do they have the mental toughness for that? And that concerns me a little bit too. I don't know how you feel about that.
Well, I think it's like with everything now is it's kind of gone that direction of bubble wrapping every kid out there.
Yeah.
And I think it goes to an extent to when you're out in high school, but then when you go to college, I think that bubble wrap comes off.
Absolutely.
To an extent, right?
Yeah,
so,
well, a lot of kids are on their own.
That's right. So do I think that there's going to be a big difference between a kid who's maybe 17 or 16 showing up on a job site and a kid who's 17 or 18 being on a job site? No, but I also don't. Yes, I do think there's a difference, but I also think it's a certain kind of kid that's going to look at the fire protection industry and say, 6-inch skid 10 on my shoulder walking up a ladder? Yeah.
Lay it on me.
That's right.
Yeah.
It takes it's like fire protection, as inclusive as everybody wants to market. Fire protection is not for everybody.
Yeah.
It's a dirty job.
Yeah.
It can be, excuse the language, I don't know if you swear on yours, but it can be shit work.
Yeah.
But at the end of the day, you go home tired. You go home knowing that you're putting in a piece of fire protection equipment that potentially is going to save somebody's property and life.
Yeah.
And that pride sits with you. If I at 16, 17, or 18 had a system that I had just finished installing activate during a fire,
yeah,
I'd be running through walls.
Absolutely.
Right?
Yeah.
I've had it as an adult.
Yeah.
And you walk around like this for weeks. Nobody,
and nobody can take that away from you.
Punch my mom in the face, and I'm going to smile at you.
Yeah,
You can't ruin that day.
No,
That's a feeling.
No,
right?
no. And I think guys in the industry have to understand that too, even for themselves.
That's right.
You've sat through trainings that I've done in the past, and I always start with a caveat around what we do in this industry. We are the first line of defense in the event of a fire.
That's right.
Fire departments across North America, we talk about 7-minute response. We know flashovers in like 3 minutes.
Yep.
Flashover is the point where we assume that lives have been lost in a structure fire.
Yep.
So they just can't get there. And so the more sprinkler heads we install, the more people will survive a fire. The reduction in injuries we can't even count.
Yep.
And then property damage is the kind of the last caveat there. Everybody talks, we see it in the news all the time. I know you and I share this view, but the news will run a story about all this crazy water damage. But had the sprinkler system not been there, then the building would have been a pile of rubble.
That's
and there's a gap there that. So I think we're all responsible for trying to educate people about that, because water damage is bad, but nobody died.
That's right.
And the footings and the foundation and the walls are still good. You may have reconstruction work to do, but that's way better than a building that's been damaged by fire.
And it extends even like when you look at the different standards as well, the difference between a 13D system and a 13R system and a 13 system. So recently in Sarnia, Ontario, which is close to where I live, there was a major fire that started in an attic in a 13R building. 100 residents, total devastation of the building.
Yeah.
It was retrofitted, it was a 13R system. 0 injuries, 0 loss of life.
Yeah.
Millions of dollars in damage. If you look at the pictures of that building, it looks like a devastating fire.
Yeah.
But the one thing what I take away when I look at that picture is the roof's gone, the ceiling's gone, and that attic space is on the floor. But everybody got out of that building alive. The sprinkler system, people think, the system didn't do anything. Like, number one, that's a 13R system designed for
evacuation.
Life protection, right? 13 property and life, 13R, 13D property or life.
Life, yeah.
So what those sprinklers did is they gave everybody the time that they needed in a vulnerable occupancy to get out of the building.
Absolutely.
And that's the education that sprinkler fitters may not be privy to that level of information. They're putting in sprinkler systems, they just think sprinklers are always life safety. And there is a specific kind of connotation to each different individual system. And that's what I'm trying to extend with the podcast, is different levels of education.
Yeah, perfect.
Right?
So we're short on this show. So
okay, we're short. Okay.
So Can you tell everybody about the podcast? Where to find it? Like, let's
yeah.
make sure.
So, Fire Sprinkler Podcast. You can find me. I'm on LinkedIn. Chris Logan on LinkedIn. Fire Sprinkler Podcast on LinkedIn, Twitter, Instagram. I got a little TikTok that I'm trying to do a little bit of stuff on, and then you can find on Spotify. It's on YouTube. I started out doing just an audio program, but now I do everything as video. So video conferencing. In the years of COVID, I got pretty proficient on the video meetings.
Yeah.
So now everything I do now is video. So even if I'm in person, I record a video, post the audio on iTunes, Spotify, Stitcher, if it's still around, Google. All of those things have access to the podcast. And then if you YouTube Fire Sprinkler Podcast, not all 91 episodes are up there. I'm trying to upload more of the older episodes, but every new episode gets released with video on YouTube as well.
That's awesome. So we're in green today. It is St. Paddy's Day. He didn't do it. I don't know. I mean, but Logan's a Scottish derivative, I think. So I mean, maybe that's why. Yeah. So
and it wasn't anything. I did have intentions. When I was pulling out all my clothes, I wasn't packing properly. I had a nice Boston Fire Department T-shirt that I had set out, and I've got my I've got my Henry Parmalee.
Yeah,
t-shirt.
perfect. All right. Thanks everybody for joining us. Between Two Extinguishers. Next episode coming shortly. Let us know what you think. Thanks so much.
Thanks.
Bye for now. Thanks, Chris. Yeah. Cheers, brother.
Absolutely.
Yeah.